the rare earths that matter so much to the U.S. still remain out of reach. Why?
Why do they still remain out of reach? The main reason is it takes 20 years to develop a mine from the moment you find a deposit to the time that it's actually being produced commercially. And also the idea that if you're doing all these mines, you've been doing the exploration for a number of years and finding where all the deposits are. And then this is also a pretty, mature industry, and it's mostly been mature and done by China for 20, 30 years. So if you suddenly decide yesterday that you want to equal a behemoth of a commercial industry, probably impossible to do it in 18 months. And to be fair, I would say the administration does seem to understand that it's going to take more than 18 months. But you're right. There are certain time limits that our own Pentagon have put on to ourselves. And I could go on. But it's a lot.
It's a lot. All right. And we've not, even with the money that has come from the government or the contracts and the focus and the attention, we haven't really made any, or what progress, if anything, have we made so far?
We've put money out the door.
Yeah.
We've put promises out the door. Those are important because even the promise of government support does attract private investment. And we've seen it across the supply chain, right? We call it a mine to magnet supply chain. That's how the U.S. is phrasing it. The mine being obvious. You pull rare earths out of the ground. You then separate them. Those separated materials effectively are then combined in a chemical way to create a magnet, a high-powered magnet. And the high-powered magnet is what goes into movable objects, basically. So electric motors, wind turbines, and data centers. But that's really complex, right? This is not just like a widget, if you will.
You cover Statecraft, and your beat went from metals and mining to Statecraft, which was a very natural development, because if we think about the way that Statecraft is being practiced right now, we could look at the Strait of Hormuz and the way Iran is controlling that. That's a big part of that, and that has to do with natural resources.
Yeah, I think the same thing. Like, is this China's Strait of Hormuz?
That's exactly where I was going.
Their control.
Yeah. I mean, listen, we put together this lovely documentary that just went out today, along with this story that you guys were mentioning.
Congratulations.
Which was terrific. Our docs team is incredible. But like, one of the things that we talk about in that story is like, it's incorrect to look at this as if the United States is going to come in and just take over and compete with China on the same level, in the same volume. The win is 5 years from now, 10 years from now, the United States, Japan, South Korea, Spain, France, the UK are all on some level, and Australia and others, producing rare earths and or permanent magnets. Even if that's a 1%, 2%, 3%, 4% slice, that's successful. Because right now, the whole pie is China. And that's not just like my opinion, right? This is, you talk to the guys you talked to this week, right?
Yeah.
Realloy and Ramaco Resources. You talk to the guys who are in this space. They have been saying that for years. They're like, Joe, the point is, like, if we can look 10 years from now and say, like, well, we got 1-2%, that's huge. So understanding what success is does matter here. And I do think it's important to say that there are many people in the government, in the Trump administration, that do get that they're not sitting there behind the scenes saying, well, we need to be 90% of the market next year.
Right. But God, there's so many questions. I know you've talked with us. How did we get there? How did we just give it away?
It's dirty. It's not a very profitable industry.
Yeah.
I think those are kind of the main 2 points, right? So in the 1980s, the United States is still the dominant producer of permanent magnets. But like, I mean, listen, let me put it this way. Talking to various people for months and months and months, if you look at the real supply chain of going from the rare earth out of the ground to the magnet, the midstream, right, where you do metallization and oxidation, it's just a part of the process, right? Like, those things standalone aren't like these massive profit drivers. And even then, when you get to the permanent magnet, like, if you talk to OEMs, like big guys, big names that everybody's heard of, and you ask them, like, well, why, like, would you buy from an American or from an Australian? They're like, yeah, at the right price. But like, we're procurement officers. Only so much of our procurement goes toward permanent magnets because you know what else we have to procure? Like real things, big things. So it's great that the Chinese make these at low cost because that's like a small part of our budget. And it's like, if you start telling that to like any of these companies are saying, we're coming in to do this, what they are also admitting to themselves is we're coming in to do a business that has small profit margins.
Why would they do it then? Like, I mean, to be realistic then, is this, I understand it from a national security perspective.
Yes.
Like, why would American companies do it?
Yeah. Or is it going to have to be
guaranteed contracts or the rise in tension between these two countries?
I get that, but then does it have to be supported by the government in some ongoing way because it is such a great business?
I think probably so, right? Like this is where you don't find too much disagreement among, let's just call it Republicans and Democrats, right? They're aligned in the idea that like, you can't have a single source supply chain on something that is absolutely essential to modern technology. They do agree with that. Like the example I use often, because I covered steel for a long time, right? It just so happens that 65% of the steel consumed in the United States on a per annum basis is made in the United States. Now, why is that? Well, a big part is steel is ubiquitous, right? Another part is steel is heavy. It costs a lot of money to move it everywhere. Right. So you want the plants as close to possible to all the construction sites, which are everywhere in the United States. To some degree, that is true of what we're talking about here, right? If we're talking the data center boom that you guys are talking about every day, the valuations that you're seeing come up on the Bloomberg terminal on a daily basis, the number of permanent magnets that are needed for those is massive. I mean, like one person put it to me, if you look at this one data center in Texas, this one data center in Texas is the equivalent of half of demand in the United States of America for permanent magnets.
Well, why couldn't, they say necessity is the mother of invention. You get 10 years out from this, very briefly, companies have said, well, we can't get these rare earths from China. We have to find a new way to do this stuff. Can that happen?
Well, I think that's where we're at right now, right? Yeah. It's like, it is the idea that you're starting from scratch on an industry. That's the thing. In an industry that already has a dominant industrial size supplier, right? Yeah. And that dominant industrial size supplier is saying to the world, without actually saying it, every time you're about to get out of the starting gates to start a business, we're going to flood the market to crush you.
Yeah. Thanks, but no thanks. I'm just thinking coming back from Milken, everybody talked AI and data centers. No one talked really, at least in my conversations, about investing in rare earth mining companies.
You got to go to a different conference.
Or doing those businesses. I guess so, but it's just interesting. Everybody understands the supply chain, the demand, the power, but this is a part of it.